Hi there, my name is Plínio Marco de Toni. I'm a professor at the Midwestern State University in Brazil at the Department of Psychology, and I'm the head of the Psychology of Bilinguism lab. And today I'm going to show you guys the main structures of the central nervous system. So that would be the central nervous system. So we have a drawing here, and this class is going to be actually very introductional because we are going to just see the main structures of this drawing. So we're not going to get into details here. We are going to end up doing that in other classes. So first thing, we can say that the central nervous system can be divided into two main structures. So from here up, we would have the brain. So that would be the brain. So I'm going to write it down here until here. So that would be the brain. And down here we have, so from here down, we have the spinal cord. So this structure here, it's the spinal cord. And I think the main idea is that the brain is the part of the central nervous system that is inside the skull. So here we can imagine that we have the skull. And the spinal cord, it's the part of the central nervous system that is outside the skull. So here, so that would be the skull. And we have a lot of different parts of the brain, obviously, and the spinal cord as well, but today I'm gonna just show you guys the main divisions. We can start by saying that this is the outer part of the brain, so I didn't do any cut here, any section, so we are gonna end up doing that in other classes as well. So here we are just analyze the outer part, not the inner part of the brain, but the outer part. So the outer part of the central nervous system, the outer part of the brain. And in the outer part of the brain, we can see actually three main structures. We have here this part here, that is obviously the most important part for the ones who are interested in neuropsychology, is called the cerebrum. So that would be this whole structure here, would be the cerebrum. Down here we have, that I just divided in three parts, we have the brainstem. So here we have brainstem, these three parts all together. And here in the back of the brain, we have this cerebellum. Cerebellum. So the cerebrum, the brainstem, and the cerebellum here in the back, when we put these parts together, we have the brain. Plus the spinal cord, as I said before, the central nervous system. Okay, let's start with the cerebrum here. So when we analyze the outer part of the cerebrum, we're going to see that the outer part of the cerebrum is composed by one structure that we call cortex. And the cortex, when we analyze the cortex, we can tell that the cortex has two main structures. One of these structures I just drew here. So for example, this line, this one here, this little one here and this little one here. This one here actually doesn't exist. This is an imaginary line that I drew here because for us analyze the lobes. But so we have one up here, one down here, and these two. So these ones here are what we call sulcus. So the cortex would be divided in sulcus and the structures that are between two sulcus. So for example, here I'm going to draw another sulcus. So here we have one sulcus, here we have another sulcus. And the structure that is among the sulcus, between two sulcus, we call that gyrus. Gyrus. So here we have one sulcus, one gyrus, another sulcus. And that would be singular. So the singular word is called sulcus. The plural word is sulci. Oh, sorry. Sulci with the I here. Sulci. And the plural would be gyri. So here, for example, we can say that we have two sulci and one gyrus. So if I draw one more sulcus here, so here we have two gyri. All right, so other than that, we can say that this outer part of the brain, the cortex, can be divided into lobes. Lobes. So here, this front part here of the cortex, we have one lobe here. And then we have another lobe here in the back of this sulcus. So here we have one sulcus. This whole structure here, it's one lobe. This whole structure is another lobe. We have another lobe down here. And we have in the back of the brain another lobe. So the main idea is that we can use all these sulci, these four sulci that I drew, for us to divide the lobes. So for example, if I get, and that's why these sulci are very important, and we have names for the sulci. So for example, this sulcus here is called, I'm gonna just put a number 1 here for us to name it. So 1, that would be the central sulcus. So that would be the central sulcus. This one here, this other sulcus, it's called number 2. Lateral sulcus. This one here, because this sulcus actually divides this lobe and this lobe, and as we're going to see in a little while, this lobe here is called parietal lobe, parietal lobe, and this one here is called the occipital lobe. So because of that, this sulcus here is called, so 3 is the parietal, occipital, sulcus. Parietal, occipital, sulcus. Parietal, occipital, sulcus. And this other one here, even though I said right now that it's a sulcus, actually it's not a sulcus. It's not called sulcus because it doesn't go as deep as a sulcus. It's kind of shallow, as if it were just a little cut. It's called Preoccipital notch. So it's a notch. It's not a sulcus, it's a notch. A notch is a little cut. And so that would be 4, right? So number 4 here. And we can say that the main importance of these structures that I just named, so central sulcus, the lateral sulcus, the parietal-occipital sulcus, and the preoccipital notch, is that they divide the lobes. So we can actually, if we analyze the whole, at least this lateral view of the brain, so that would be the lateral view. Because of course we can analyze the brain throughout other views. So we're gonna do that later in another video. But we can say that these 4 structures can divide the cortex into lobes. And so right here in the front of the brain we have the frontal lobe, and of course it goes until here, right? So this sulcus that I drew, it's part of the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe is this structure here, like this whole structure, frontal lobe. In the back of the central sulcus we have the parietal lobe, the parietal lobe. So the parietal lobe is this structure here, until here. So that's the parietal lobe. So this sulcus here is a sulcus that is inside the parietal lobe. It's part of the parietal lobe. And here in the back we have the, so here we have the occipital lobe. So same idea. So here, so that would be the occipital lobe. And in the lateral part of the brain, this structure here is called temporal lobe. Temporal lobe. Okay, so that would be the cortex. Other than that, if we get the brainstem, so this structure here in the lower part of the brain, we have three parts. So I'm gonna just put some letters here. So A, B, C. So A would be, so let's write it here. A would be the medulla or medulla oblongata. So that would be the medulla oblongata. Here in the middle we have the pons, and here we have the midbrain. So the medulla oblongata, the pons, and the midbrain. All together, they are the brainstem. And as I said before, in the back of the brainstem, we have the cerebellum. So that's it. That's just an overview of the central nervous system. And in another video, we are gonna go further in a lot of details. So we are gonna, for example, we are gonna analyze the other sulci and gyri of the outer part of the cerebrum, for example.